Aaron Ingersoll of the mighty family Ingersoll-Rand, who you would know from their proclivity to build air compressors, has asked, number one, T, how do I send you millions of dollars from our family fortune of building air compressors? To which I would reply, email me. The next question she asked was, thoughts on what advantages you should look for in a bug-in, bug-out location. Then there's more to go from there, but full stop, those are two completely different things. Bug-in versus bug-out are for me, two completely different sets of considerations. Then next, high up advantages, which I'm gonna guess we're talking about altitude and terrain. How far from one or multiple water sources, south-facing slope for growing crops, question mark. I'm from Maine, so I've got mountains to go to. Okay, hello Maine. So Mainers are their own special breed of a little crazy. I've worked with several people from Maine, and hardy stock, just a little, you got some of that going on. But I'm sure you're fine. I'm sure, ma'am, you're great, you're great. Don't hurt me. So I've talked quite a bit about both of these scenarios, but we have a lot of new people here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and hit the high points. As far as what to look for in a bug out property, bug in, bug out location. Okay, yeah, water for sure. How far from multiple water sources? As close as possible, right? And so this property right now where we are, this is not a bug out property because we live here. You know, Pastor Joe is fond of saying, and I'm not a Pastor Joe, you know, I'm not a shill for Pastor Joe, but he and I, the Father has seen fit to align us geographically, spiritually, mentally. He often does videos that he will release a video within a day of me shooting a video on the very same subject, or vice versa, repeatedly, constantly. He'll text me about something that I had just been reading, or vice versa. So, but anyway, Pastor Joe says, and I fully agree, I mean, I do business with the man, says, you can't live in your bug out location, right? So I don't live in a bug out, my bug out location. But here, we are very near multiple water sources. 1, 2, 3 creeks, 2 springs, 3 wells, and a stock pond. And it just won't stop raining here. So, you know, we got lots of water. And I also got 2 puppies running around trying to kill each other, which is fun. It's good times. So the female's definitely smarter and more aggressive. Who'd have thought? And distracting. So yeah, you should be as close to multiple water sources as possible within reason. I don't like the idea of you bugging out to the woods with nothing. Like no hard-sided structure. So I would much rather you control a piece of land. I'd much rather you control a piece of land and you can build a small cabin on it. And then on that small cabin, do some water collection. If you can put in a well, which I mean up there, especially if you're in the mountains, the depth of your well and the cost to put in that well, both of those things are gonna be considerable. And then as your well gets, the deeper your well gets, the harder it gets for you to extract water from it without electricity. Doesn't mean it can't be done, but the harder it gets. So that's something to consider as well. And then what does that electricity look like if you decide to do that? And the costs start mounting up. Now for some of us, those costs are negligible. For some of us, those costs are a deal breaker. So it all depends, right? But I'd much rather you own a piece of land rather than just, I'm gonna go out into the middle of yon woods and survive indefinitely. Because indefinitely is gonna be a short period of time in my book. Okay, in my book, it's a short period of time. So what should you look for then? Yeah, water source is great, absolutely near a water source. A lake, a stream, a creek, a pond, a spring, all of those are great. A spring is a huge blessing. Where water just comes up out of the ground naturally, that's phenomenal. Saves you, again, the time, energy, calories of drilling a well. But build a hard-sided structure and do water collection off of that hard-sided structure. That's a way to get going with that. You know, the high ground is great strategically, tactically. Owning the high ground is a basic precept of war. Control the high ground. It's also pretty difficult to affect positive change agriculturally on land that's sloped like this. Okay, so that's something you really want to consider. Gentle slope, not a problem. You start getting here, okay, we can work with it. You start getting into this, maybe, but it's gonna be a lot of work, and you start dealing with this, forget about it. You're not growing anything on that. You're barely surviving on anything that's 45 degrees or more, right? And so high ground is also relative. Like the high ground in eastern Kansas versus the high ground in northern Colorado are two completely different things, right? And geographically, they're not that far apart, right? In Maine, if you've got mountains to go to, those mountains are part of the Appalachian system, and they're older and more rounded and not quite as extreme as the peaks and grades and changes in elevation you're going to get in the Rockies, right? But still be careful of that. You do tactically, strategically want to hold the high ground, but you don't want to have such an extreme grade that you can barely live on it, let alone plant on it. Now you can employ swales. Permaculture is great. You can employ swales. There's other ways to deal with catching and diverting water that are very effective, but all that's going to take time, which means I'd love for you to own the property and have a hard-sided structure there so you can spend time there to go and actually do those things, not just bug out to the woods with your survival seed vault and pray to the Most High that you're going to make it. That doesn't mean that he can't do it. He's in the business of miracles, but it's going to go better for you, says me, if you actually have a foothold on the land than if you just show up and then start doing things on the worst day of your life. Which is why we're here now doing what we're doing now. So, and some of our bug out locations look amazingly similar to this in different states in the region that we're in, which is amazing, right? And then you get into mutually supporting positions, right? I raise sheep, they raise cattle. Awesome. Nice. Or yeah, we're coming, but in the meanwhile, I want to stock a literal ton of food here and a whole bunch of ammunition and medical supplies and all the things, and build a hard-sided structure on your place so that you can build a hard-sided structure on my place, so that we have mutually supporting positions. If it gets bad where you are, you come here. If it gets bad where I am, I'm coming there, right? And when I'm coming there with sheep and chickens and ducks and food and this and that. As much as I can take with me, I'm coming. We're gonna look like the Beverly Hillbillies when we roll into town, man. So, foothold on the land, not just I'm bugging out to the wilderness. South-facing slope for growing crops. Yeah, absolutely, as long as you're there doing it. Okay, again, as long as you're there doing it. What do I look for in a piece of land? The population density equation is huge for me, and that's a term, I don't know if anybody else has been saying that, but if they are, apologies. The first time I became aware of it was the first time it came out of my mouth. So, but that being said, it's not a new concept. Lots of other people have been saying this for a long time, just using their own wording, okay? So, but you want to be far enough away from large groups of people, but not so far away from people you can't form your own small groups of people. Okay, so the more people you have, the more threat you have. And in the middle of nowhere, you tend not to get a lot of people. The danger with that is if you don't have at least a small subsection of the populace to choose from to put your team together with, now you're doing it alone. And everybody here knows my opinion of the lone wolf prepper versus team building, tribe, community mag, okay? If I break your ankle, maliciously, I show up in the middle of the night and I what's that movie? Misery. And I misery you. Ugh. You're done for, right? If you're out walking and you twist your ankle in the woods and you're alone, you're done for. So I'd much rather you have a team. I mean, again, we're talking, you know, basic military precepts. Nobody goes anywhere alone or does anything alone. So not that bugging in or bugging out is a military action, but in some cases it kind of rhymes with one. It shares facets of that type of thing, right? So nobody does anything alone, right? Everybody's got a buddy. Your battle buddy, your swim buddy, your team member, your whatever. Everybody's got a buddy. So You want enough population that you can pick from people to build a team, but not so much population that they can overwhelm you. And so I like the 10 to 50 people per square mile equation a lot more than I like the 10,000 to 50,000 people per square mile equation. And I think 10 is a real good number. It's not a hard and fast number. You know, it depends on where you are and it depends on the situation, but I like 10 as far as a population density equation. Then I would look for land that, if it has an existing building on it that has utilities run to it and an existing well and electricity and septic, that's huge. You know, that's going to drive the cost of land of that piece of property up. But in actuality, you're gaining a lot because the ever-increasing cost and the ever-increasing worthlessness of the US dollar to put in a well and run power now is going to cost you more today than it did when it was put in when the property. So you're actually getting ahead on that one. Even if the building is just a wreck. Puppy, sorry. Even if the building is just a wreck and it's got to be bulldozed, fine. Good, start over. But your well, your septic, and your electricity is already there. Or there's a propane tank out back, 500-gallon propane. Awesome, awesome, right? And the on-grid versus off-grid. There's nothing wrong with being off-grid, but having the grid to siphon off of to make progress now while you still can is definitely in your favor. Like it's just way faster to plug in a circular saw and cut boards than it is to use a handsaw. Not that handsaws aren't cool, I love them, but it's faster to use a circular saw. It's way easier to just boil water on the stove than it is to build a fire and boil water over the top of it, so forth and so on. Okay, so while the system sucks, use it to your advantage while you can. So, you know, and then you got to be able to afford it, and by afford it, I would prefer it if you paid cash for it. I don't like people going into debt for anything, but if you're gonna go into debt for something, make sure it's sustainable. Okay, not something you missed 2 paychecks and now the bank owns it again. It's got to be sustainable in the long term. And then I look at carrying capacity of the land as far as the ability to run livestock on it, the ability to grow crops on it. You know, what are your natural resources? You know, we have naturally occurring food all around us. We have berries, we have wild asparagus, we have wild garlic. We have pine nuts, we have acorns, we have pecans. We have sugar cane, we have all kinds of things just naturally growing on this property right now. Pears and persimmons, and I don't even remember all this stuff. My wife does. Yeah, I need to cross-train more on that. You're absolutely right. But it's here already, right? So that's cool. So there's incidental calories here. You could hunter-gatherer this place and pick up hundreds of incidental calories in a day just walking around doing stuff in the right season of year. So, you know, to say nothing of wild edible greens that are here and so forth and so on. So I like looking at that. I like looking at, you know, like I said, you know, can I run sheep here, or meat rabbits if you're into that, or chickens? You can run chickens pretty much anywhere, right? And what's the sustainability of that? Can they self-support? Can chickens self-support? Is there enough stuff for them to dig through and eat worms and grubs and bugs and find little bits of grain and berries and all that? Yeah, I like looking at that for a piece of land. But again, I much prefer that you take a foothold on the land rather than have a place that you're just going to run to when the balloon goes up. Now I realize not everybody can do that, but I think it would be dishonest for us to not acknowledge that that's the better option. It's the better option to start doing the things now while you can, rather than to have to do them all at once on the worst day of our lives. Now, thoughts on what advantages you should look for in a bug-in, bug-out location. Now, bug-in, listen, if you're in, I just don't think bug-in is the best thing for pretty much anybody unless you live out here. Urban and suburban situations, bugging in is just a matter of time, right? Because you're dealing with an extremely large population with extremely limited resources, okay? You can't walk your neighborhood in downtown Dallas and come up with many incidental calories to eat, or many water sources to draw from, okay? Or, you know, firewood making materials. Where are you gonna build a fire to stay warm? The rooftop of your condo? Like, things get weird. Things get weird. So it's a resources game and a population density game, and it's skewed inappropriately, says me, in an urban area. So I just completely reject bugging in an urban area. And I think if you're in an urban area, you need to know where you're going right now. That if I put a gun to your head right now, I said, you have to go or you die, you don't have to think about it. Okay, and I mean that like point blank. If you take one thing away from this video, if you live in an urban environment and you don't know where you're going when the balloon goes up, stop everything you're doing as far as preparedness goes right now. You can even stop this video right now and figure out where you're going and how you're getting there. If you have a bug out bag but no bug out plan and no bug out location, and you're an urban prepper, you're done. And I say that in love. You're done. You gotta figure that out, okay? So I just completely reject the concept of bugging in an urban environment. In suburbia, I still don't like it. I still don't like it because I think that the time that you're spending bugging in reduces your ability to respond to an ever-growing situation where you could be putting distance in between you and whatever the perceived threat is that's causing you to bug in the first place. Weathering the storm, right? There's some people who survive quite fine when the hurricanes hit their town and they weather the storm. And there's other people who get oak trees smashed through their house or get killed or get hit by pickup trucks or whatever, right? And so rolling those dice, I don't love it. But again, resources and population density. So if you live on the edge of town, away from people, and you're fairly well stocked and nobody really knows where you live, roll those dice. If you live, you know, we were within walking distance of the town square when we lived in North Texas, okay? Lovely little neighborhood, lovely little town square, great neighbors. We had our neighborhood team put together, you know, our team of suburbanites. We had all of that. And I'm telling you, for any period of time greater than maybe a month, untenable. Just absolutely untenable because I'm squared away, but everybody else around me isn't. And all it takes is somebody looking over the 6-foot privacy fence in their backyard into my backyard to realize that he's got meat rabbits and he's got chickens and he's got meat birds and a little chicken tractor and he's got row crops and he's got 11 raised beds and they've got fruit trees and they've got berries and they've got grapes and they've got compost and they've got buckets full of food and he's got water barrels back there and they got all this stuff. And I'm over here, had to drill 3 new holes in my belt just this past month to keep my pants from falling down. Yeah, we're taking it either through conversation or by force. It's untenable in the long term. It's untenable in the long term. I mean, and I say that to everybody, including one of my best friends, Squid, of this Squid and Bear show. I don't love where he lives. Right? I understand he's got his reasons and I get it. I absolutely get it. But man, bug out, get out. I don't like shelter in place. I don't like bugging in. I don't think it's sustainable for anything other than small hiccups in the system. If the system goes sideways, man, you better know where you're going and you better get there fast. And you need to have a team of people that you're going with. You need to have a location that you're going to, and that you have a plan that you're going through as you do it, okay? Multifaceted plan, at least 3 ways that you go about doing these different things. So, bugging in, advantages of bugging in. I don't have many. I really don't. Unless you're medically infirm. If you just can't, okay, I get it. Do the best you can. Make something happen. Make something happen. I would advocate, because I'm me, I would advocate being imminently prepared and being capable of making a strong show of force. And you need to intimately know your neighbors, right? And you need to get them good as well. And that might just be as simple as, listen, hey, Randy, can I talk to you for a minute? Yeah, what's going on, T? Man, you know me, right? Like, you know I got guns and stuff, right? Oh, yeah, I know that, man. My next-door neighbor in Texas, he'd go out of town and say, hey, T, I love this guy. Hey, T, I'm going out of town. All right. He said, anybody come on my property, you shoot him for me, all right? Now, I'm within walking distance of the city, the town square, right? He's like, you'll shoot him for me, right? He's like, yes, sir, I will. He said, all right. And we'd go out of town. He said, anybody come on your property, I'll kill them for you. Thank you. Love this old man. Like, and we weren't joking. Like, it was straight up. And of course, you know, back when the town was small enough that you could know all the town cops, we did, and they knew we had that arrangement, and they didn't have a problem with it. One of the town, the chief of police and the sheriff who lived there in town, we were all buddies with as well. Like, we had our little network of people, which is really important to have your little network of people, but also intimately know your neighbors and pull them aside and say, hey, listen, Randy, you know I got guns and stuff, right? It's like, yeah, I know you do. And I say, good, because I know you do too. Okay, so there's kind of a quid pro quo there, and just go, listen, man, I'm a little bit more prepared than that, and I'd love it if you could be too, because just if things get sideways, I mean, man, you've seen me rucking in my plate carrier, right? It's like, yeah, I've seen that. It's like, that's not an accident. I know. Okay. We should, like, let's get together, let's grill some burgers, have a few beers, and let's talk this over a little bit, because I'm telling you right now, man, things get sideways, I want you on my team, because I'm not standing here at my mailbox, I'm pushing 3 blocks that way, over there at the corner of this street and that street. That's a strategic intersection. I want to own that. How are we going to do that? Oh, man, well, Bill, you know, I play pool with Bill every other Tuesday night, and that's Bill's house right there. Yeah, what's his temperature? Oh, yeah, he's on board. Cool, let's talk with Bill too, right? And start. You got to be unafraid to have conversations with people. You have to put yourself out there. And I know red flag laws and homegrown domestic terrorist groups and this and that. I know all of that, right? Put yourself out there. You're still an American. You still have rights. You still have freedom of speech. You're not talking about sedition. You're not talking about undermining the government. You're talking about neighborhood protection. Have those conversations. Okay, have those conversations. If you're gonna bug in, you absolutely need a team of people. And for a lot of y'all, and this is perfectly cool too, I get it. You're not the frontline combat troops, you're the auxiliary. Awesome. Well, do what an auxiliary does. Have lots of food, be good at cooking, know your medical skills, have your gardening squared away, know how to navigate, know where all the water sources are, right? Be good at, have a library, have lots of information, know how to can, be good at watching children, do the laundry, right? Because it takes a certain number of men or women with rifles to keep the bad guys away, and it takes a certain number of men and women with shovels to keep the guys with rifles fed, right? Like, that's the dichotomy, check, right? That's kind of how it works. To dumb it down into its most simple terms, that's how it works. So if that's the way it's gonna be, if you're not on the rifle end of the equation, be on the shovel end of the equation, or the spatula end of the equation, right? Or the crochet needle end of the equation. Doesn't matter. Listen, I'm hard on clothes, man. Somebody's gonna have to fix my pants when I blow the knees out again, or whatever, right? And there's no shame in that. There's nothing wrong with it. It takes all types, right? And that's, again, the challenge of being the lone wolf preppers. You can't be all types. Joel Salatin, who I love this man as far as permaculture goes and just regenerative agriculture, describes himself as a conservative Christian libertarian lunatic farmer. Man, I can get on board with that. Joel Salatin says that Father God did not put all the different skill sets that it takes to be a successful farmer into one person, paraphrasing, right? And he's right. And he doesn't do the same thing to people who are preparedness minded either. Okay, there's not a one of us that's 100% squared away. So, you know, I get these questions, hey T, what kind of radios should I buy? The black ones with buttons. How do they work? You hand them to your comms guy and he makes them work, and then you press the buttons. Like, that's, you know, I'm dumbing myself down a little bit, but that's kind of where I'm at with commo. It's not my gifting. Can I train that up? Yes, but at some point you have to apply the Pareto principle and do the things that you're good at and let somebody else do the things that they're good at. And it doesn't mean we don't cross-train. It doesn't mean that I don't have holes in my skill sets that need to be addressed, and it doesn't mean that you don't have holes in your skill sets that need to be addressed. But at some point, if this person over here is just absolutely a green thumb, I want them to know how to run a rifle, but I'm not making them run a rifle. I want them to grow food. That's their thing, right? Or if this person over here is great with kids, awesome. Can you please set up the daycare / school for us? Because we're gonna need that because we've got young children. Okay, and I know you can run a rifle. That's awesome. I'm glad. Everybody here who can shoulder one should be able to run one. But not all the time, not always. So if you're sheltering in place, if you're bugging in, and you're not a gunslinger, cool, be the auxiliary, help support the gunslingers, because you need the gunslingers to maintain some semblance of normalcy as far as security and peace of mind goes, and then you need the auxiliary to maintain the gunslinger so that there's something normal to maintain. Okay, so it's a balance, and that's really an amalgamation of lots of different thoughts and lots of different videos that I've already done on this subject. So I'd encourage you to use the search bar in Patreon, and you can look up, you know, bug in, bug out, homestead, so forth, so on. And then there's lots of videos to this effect already on YouTube as well. So I don't know if I hit the high points for you. I don't know if I got out what you were looking for, but I've done probably 10 pieces of content on this already. So I would encourage you, there's 827 videos right now between YouTube and Patreon in the last year and a half. Prolific much? So go take a look at what's already there if there's some unanswered questions. And other than that, I hope that this information finds you well and was a blessing to you. And looking forward to your comments down below. Shalom.